Trump Card, which is the new film from Dinesh D'Souza, our friend. He's a scholar, a producer, a director, all of these things. He joins us now via Skype to discuss this and everything that's been happening with this election. My friend, good to see you, Dinesh.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Nice to be on the show.
Good to speak with you. And boy, the timing of this, which I'm sure, this has been a very surreal month. And when you were, and I love this interview that you did with Catherine, because here we're having a fight over election integrity. And a lot of us could see that it was coming to this particular point. I think that the litigation that Democrats undertook state by state with mail-in ballots maybe expedited it a little bit. But I wanted to know what your take on this whole issue is. And I'm going to ask you kind of a fatalist question. Are we going to ever have Republicans that are going to be able to be legitimately elected again if we don't defeat this mail-in ballot fraud?
Well, the answer to that question is no. In other words, if there is a systematic rigging of the elections and there is proof of that, and the Supreme Court gives us sort of the brush off by saying something like, well, it's none of our business, or this is up to the legislature to fix. When you're talking about Democratic legislatures that are doing the rigging in the first place, then we are at an impasse, because it means that we know the system is rigged. It ultimately raises the question of whether we still even have a democracy, let alone a country. And we will have to sort of consider what we can do to respond in that situation. I mean, we'll have to consider options like civil disobedience that have previously been sort of off the table. But ultimately, think back, that's what Martin Luther King did in a massive way when he was faced with unjust laws. These would be unjust laws, or at least unjust in the way that they're being implemented. And we would, I think, have to consider options, as I say, that have previously been options we didn't have to think about.
No, I think that's a very good point. And with the civil disobedience and everything else, because this, even when you do your civic duty, as you were discussing with Catherine in this movie, Trump Card, a clip from this that you can find online, even when you were discussing this with Catherine, I was remembering everything that she went through just because she volunteered. She wasn't getting paid. She volunteered to go and do this because she cares that much about election integrity. And this was the result. Obviously, you've had your own experiences with the Obama administration, but tell me what you learned from Catherine and how widespread is that kind of bullying, I guess, for the lack of a better descriptor.
Well, I have to say, going back to 2012, I myself did not take the ballot fraud issue seriously enough. I think in the era of sort of just absentee ballots, there were a lot of reports of fraud. But of course, absentee ballots were a tiny fraction of the overall number. So what has changed with this election is two things. One, of course, is coronavirus, which gave the Democrats the opportunity to do these tens of millions of mail-in ballots sort of blasted out like confetti all across the country. And that creates opportunities for all kinds of shenanigans. And then the new factor, which we're waiting to hear more about, which is the rigging of the machines themselves. Now, here we are basically in Venezuela type corruption. In Venezuela, when you vote, you can't cheat because they mark your finger. But the cheating occurs at the ballot counting level. And I didn't think that would really be possible in America. But evidently, this is exactly the accusation being made by Sidney Powell and by Rudy Giuliani. And so I'm eagerly waiting to see what's behind this, because this would be explosive. It would blow the lid off. And I think it would, in some ways, call into question the integrity of the Democratic Party itself.
Yes. And for all of their discussions as to the election, they accused President Trump of being an illegitimate president, Dinesh. They said that he was basically put into office by Vladimir Putin. But then since 2016, I guess that now their position, even though nothing has changed with regards to ballots and counting, except for the mail-in ballot and the coronavirus, the pandemic, now we're supposed to believe that all of their accusations, oh no, they're fine now. Everything is good. Trust the system that we've smeared and we've tried to destroy these past 4 years. I don't think a lot of Americans are buying that.
Well, let's compare the ability of the Russians in 2016 to rig the election versus the capacity of Democratic mayors and governors who are administering these machines, administering this counting, pushing the Republican poll watchers far away. I mean, how would the Russians do it? They'd have to buy some Facebook ads, I guess. So the Russian theory was nonsensical from the outset. But this is not nonsensical. You're talking about accusations and fingers being pointed at the very people, Democratic districts, swing states, and notice that the counting seems to have stopped only there. We find all these statistical, I wouldn't even call them anomalies, they're statistical impossibilities. They have the same probative value as somebody who says there's a 1 in 25 million chance that it's not this guy's DNA at the scene. In other words, he did it. It's obvious. So I think what we're dealing with here is a lot of evidence, both episodic and anecdotal evidence, dead people voting, statistical evidence, and perhaps even machine evidence.
Right. You've kind of switching gears here. I noticed a little while ago you were remarking on what Joe Biden has been floating around, this forgiveness of student loan debt. I love how so magically it's put as though it's just going to be erased away like a bleach bit. None of us are. I didn't agree to the terms of this loan, Dinesh, so I don't know why I should be or you or anyone else should be on the hook for it. What can we expect from a Biden administration? And is he going to be able to, do you think, the party to claw back some of those minority voters that they have hemorrhaged this past election season?
I don't think so. I don't think this is a done deal by any means. It remains hotly contested. But if we do have a Biden administration, the early indications are that what they will try to do is seek a transfer of wealth away from working class people and toward, you may say, the college educated class. Let's remember that this whole college thing is a major racket. The reason colleges have been raising prices, essentially far beyond the rate of inflation, at a time when technology is lowering actual college costs. The cost of delivering educational systems, of running colleges is lower, but the reason they jack up the prices is they know that the student isn't really paying. It's not just the parent who's paying, but it's the federal government in various forms of grants and loans. So this is kind of a collusion scheme in which colleges know that they can get money out of the government, which is getting money out of the taxpayer. So I think when Biden's talking about forgiving these loans, he's not talking about who's going to bear the burden of it. And the answer is quite simply people who haven't gone to college. They're the ones, the plumbers, the truck drivers, all these guys are being ripped off to pay for these bohemian kids who are living in their mom's basement, who unwisely got liberal arts degrees, don't have jobs, irresponsibly took out the loans, have no intention of paying them back. That's evidently Biden's constituency that he's trying to pay back now.
There you go. You sound like the college dad too when you're talking about that. I'm the exact same way. I look at this and I think this is such a racket. And my youngest is like, I'm just going to go into tech. I'm just going to go into coding. Why would I go into all of this? Talking with Dinesh D'Souza, whose new movie Trump Card is out, and I'm gonna ask how people can watch that, Dinesh. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the latest cancel culture and the tech deplatforming. Are you worried about yourself being deplatformed? I know that people have tried to cancel you 6 Ways to Sunday, but you create these really well done films. They're very well produced. The production quality is really good on these films, and I'm happy, just to pay you a compliment here. For so long, conservatives have made bad looking films, and your films actually look really nice. So congratulations on that. Are you worried about being deplatformed or being able to get your message and film out through online or onto televisions? Is that a concern that you have?
Well, with regard to the films themselves, we've been pretty successful in getting them out on all the major platforms. And so Trump Card right now, you can go on Amazon Prime, you can go on Google or YouTube. It's available on Apple iTunes, Fandango, the movie site, a whole bunch of places. So TrumpCardTheMovie.com, that's the website where you can see a list of all these platforms. Kind of fun to watch the movie on your big screen TV because I made it for the theater. I made it for the big screen. Unfortunately, the theatrical picture is a little too spotty. Now, the digital censorship is a whole different matter. I posted something on Facebook, very benign, a couple of weeks ago, in which I just quoted Biden talking about how Antifa is merely an idea, straight out of Biden's mouth from the debate. And Facebook kind of immediately puts a big warning label on it, which they call lacking context. I'm thinking to myself, lacking context. What are you talking about? Did Biden make some larger statement that I'm ignoring? And I think what makes this so maddening, Dana, is that, unlike with any other business, there's nobody to call. If United cancels your reservation, you get them on the phone. You go, guys, there's been a big mistake. Listen, you guys are being ridiculous. Please restore my reservation. But with these digital guys, you can't call anyone. There's just a bunch of people secretively making these decisions and arbitrarily imposing them. So to me, digital media censorship poses really the greatest peacetime threat to free expression in my lifetime.
Yeah, and the thought is, how do we as conservatives, how do we counter that? Because if we create our own platforms, we're just I guess going to have two of every one service, two of every one product, and be ideologically segregated. Is that even possible? I mean, what is the solution to this?
Well, I think to protect ourselves, it is to go to alternative platforms. Now, I'm not off Twitter, but I've set up on Parler. And Dana, my gosh, I mean, I was at maybe 300,000 on Parler 3 weeks ago. I'm at 2.1 million. So in other words, the growth on Parler, it just shows me how much I was being restricted on Twitter. Similarly, I post videos now on Rumble, which is an alternative to YouTube. Now, some people say, well, Dinesh, you're just looking for a safe space. No, I'm not looking for a safe space. I prefer hostile spaces, to be honest. But the truth of it is, when there's a sword of Damocles hanging over my head, where for something I say, nothing unreasonable, I'm not doing any hate speech, but nevertheless, if they can just cut me off at Twitter, cut me off on YouTube, it helps me to have to build alternative platforms where I can go to in case I'm banned.
I like that, because you are your own brand and you don't have to really rely on a third party platform or service to establish that. We just have to be able to be versatile with our brand and take it with us where we go. Dinesh D'Souza, so good to see you. TrumpCardTheMovie.com. And folks, go look at where you can watch this film. It's another great film from Dinesh, and it's good to speak with you in this very weird new reel, my friend. God bless.